I have started so many episodes with you going, so yeah. I basically scrub along until I find a moment where you say it, and that's where the episode starts.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to purposely avoid that now. So.
Yeah, you just a dead silence from the other side. Okay, fantastic, well done. We were talking to Kev recently about background artists. Was it Kev? One of the other episodes about people in the background swinging swords and brushing and not quite doing the actions. So I'm hopefully going to be in the background in Vikings as of Monday. To give us a shout. So I'm going to go down to that. And I'm going to see how many pantomime motions I can do in the background before they just kick me off the set.
How many everyday actions can you fuck up?
Exactly. It's just me basically charading things in the background as they're trying to do. Just be doing a horse, doing the reins and stuff while there's no reins there.
Excellent, yeah. That'll be good crack.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Cool.
I don't know. I've watched that trailer for Glass like 3 or 4 times. That new one. There's because you're going through and there's so many little details in it, and I'm like, because it's a fucking M. Night Shyamalan trailer, so he's loading in stuff into it. But
there's so much going on. I was watching it and just pausing it on McAvoy's neck just to see the bundle of cables that was his neck.
yeah. As I was saying, no mice on his shoulders. There's too many traps.
Traps too big.
Oh no!
I love it.
Oh, that's yeah.
Right, we'll start off. I'm Jonny Lynch. That's Glennon. We're joined by friend of the Shinobi, Sinéad Murphy.
And I'm here too.
We're here to examine how tropes bleed across movies, TV shows, and video games. Welcome to Dystropia. That's the start.
It's very good.
Sinead is the person who's been on the podcast most often after me and Glennon because you were the voice saying Dystropia under the starting music for like the first 10 episodes.
Oh man, I forgot about that.
It was more than the first 10.
I don't listen, okay? I listen to Johnny talk so much that I don't do it anymore voluntarily without being able to rebut him. Like, it's just torture. So
you can't tell him he's wrong, so it's like
exactly. That's the only saving grace in a conversation with him anyway. So yeah, it's just there would be no reason for me to. But so
to put yourself through that. But of course, this episode
contextless. That's what I am.
This episode is 90s kids. 90s kids will remember 90s nostalgia kind of feel.
Yeah, 90s nostalgia, because I was like, I'm more of an 80s kid. I am old.
Yeah.
So like, you know, I was 8 when the 90s happened. I know, right?
That's all right. You've got a different perspective. That was
Get the calculator out.
That was little spotty. The run up to 18-year-old Glennon all through the 90s. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, pretty much. I was probably most heavily influenced by the 90s though. So
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, the 90s were where you kind of like you were at that age where you could absorb pop culture. Whereas like I was like 11 when the 90s ended. So you know, it's very very early stuff for me.
You've got that real fundamental stuff in there.
Yeah,
You were like, I've never seen a Saturday morning that didn't have cartoons.
Exactly. That was just the starting point for myself.
Yeah, fair enough.
Back when like it's like, what do you mean TV only had 4 channels? What are you on about?
Yeah,
nonsense.
I remember growing up with See What's on the Other Side and just would click over to the other channel. It was like, nah, put it back, click back to the first channel.
And it was always, it wasn't, when you say click, you didn't have a remote. It was whoever was the youngest in the family had to sit by the TV to do it. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
You timed them to see how fast they could do it. That was the classic trick.
Exactly. So I'll see how fast you can get to the TV and back.
I've got my Casio stopwatch here. Go see how fast you can do it.
Brilliant.
Look at you fancy prick with your watch.
I know.
There was Glennon looking at his wrist as if he had a watch. He was like, go on. Man, that was 10 seconds. Well done.
10 seconds. Shoddy.
Do you want to kick us off there, Glennon, then with movies?
Yeah, I kind of want to look like... I couldn't pick which movie kind of summed up the 90s most for me. So I found essentially a trilogy, an unofficial trilogy.
Okay.
All featuring the same actor, and they all kind of encompass the 90s. For me, at least.
If you've written Freddie Prinze Jr. as well, then we're gonna have some overlap.
It's Terminator 2, Eraser, and End of Days.
Oh, wow.
Amazing, fantastic.
Those 3 films. So like Terminator 2, I'd seen Terminator 1 on TV, and when Terminator 2 came out on video, it was like, my family got it out from the video store, and remember watching it and just being blown away. I was like the T-1000 thing just blew my mind.
Yes. Absolutely. And to this day, it all stands up perfectly.
Yeah, and I was just like, how on earth? And it's there. I can't find a flaw in that film. There's nothing. Well, sorry, no. There's a single flaw. The Terminator can impersonate John Connor's voice, but he still insists on speaking with an Austrian accent in America. Other than that, it's fine.
I choose to believe that they basically had their program and like, talk like this. People will be terrified and they won't know why.
Yeah.
I need you close your motorcycle. I am on the back heel already. What are you doing?
So, but yeah, it is a fantastic film. It is. It's kind of one of the masterpieces of 90s cinema.
Yep.
And at the time, it had like a ridiculous budget and it made a ridiculous amount of money. So for 1992, it cost somewhere in the region of $100 million to make.
Yeah,
which is unheard of, like at that time, and because like most films, like Waterworld, people were like, "Oh my god, this is an insane amount of money," and it's like,
that was like 40 million or something.
Yeah, it's like no, Terminator 2 was like right up there, and then it made back like $500 million in the box office.
Yes,
like it
is
absolutely insane film. And then I was like, and this was obviously at the point where I'm starting to become more aware of Arnold Schwarzenegger and how big he is in cinema, because the first time you see him, you have no idea who he is. You're like, big guy with muscles. Okay, it's the same as every other film I've seen with an action guy in it. But and I'd seen Predator, and then I saw this, and I was like, okay, hang on. I saw Terminator 1, sorry, and then I saw this, and then and then I was confused because then I saw this Predator 2, and I was like, wait, this is. What? Hang on. The first
you
sequel.
Kept the Predator, but you didn't keep.
Yeah. The first sequel where the main character didn't come across. I'm like, no, I don't understand. I like.
You've seen Predator 1, right? You know why he's not in 2.
So, and then Eraser. I remember going to see Eraser in the cinema.
Eraser and Barbed Wire have they sit on a similar shelf in my head in that they both have an amazing opening sequence where in Eraser it's a suit-up sequence. Where he's putting all the guns on his belt and putting like thumbing bullets into a bandolier and like putting knives into sheaths and things. Yeah. And Barbed Wire opens with Pamela Anderson stripping in the dark. And to me, I'm like, oh, you're just introducing a character in the most action exploitation and sexploitation ways possible. And I was like, all right, I see what I'm in for the movie. That's show don't tell. Let's do this.
Yeah, and I remember going to see Eraser in the cinema, and I believe it was 18s when I went to see it. But it was Irish cinema in the mid-90s. No one gave a shit. I went in with my brother-in-law, my mate Sean, and we went in to see it. And it was in like the Omni and Santry where they have like they have the lovers' seats in the thing where there are two things. But it was a mid-afternoon showing, so we took one of those each. So like all three of us are like lounging across these couches, like
just like Lord Byroning around on the
grapes dangling above your head,
and like it's like I have that the giant drink and the giant thing of popcorn and the packet of Maltesers. But I'm only like 13, and I'm like, I don't know the word for this feeling, and then my brother-in-law's like, decadent. That's it.
You must have looked like you shrank in your seat with just big everything around you.
Oh my god!
But it was so good. But yeah, I just remember watching it, and it was like that was one that again, like the special effects actually weren't terrible for a thing about a film about a gun that allowed you to see through walls.
Yes.
And it was a rail gun, so it had the weird like tracer round effect on it. And
yeah.
I remember, and that was the first time I'd winced watching a film, because there's a bit where they throw a nail bomb in where he is, and he lifts the door of the fridge. And it goes through his hand. And I was like, Jesus! Like that, I nearly spilled my popcorn. It was like, it left a mark. I was like, okay. And for a while I actually was like, that's actually a pretty good action film. It was a film that I'd go back and watch again, and I was like, yeah, there's some bad stuff in this, but it still holds up. And I was kind of like, all right, okay, yeah. And then End of Days was like, I was 16.
Just on the Eraser, me and my brother loved that. We must have had it on like a 2 VHS set of that and Commando. But if I was 10 watching it, Rory must have been 8. Like it was.
Yeah.
We were far too young watching it.
Yeah.
I
always remember
Rory's
the films.
younger than you.
And my younger sister was watching it too, so she must be.
Rory's younger than me. Yeah.
He doesn't look it.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
No, he doesn't look.
Hi, Rory.
He's been in the California sun for too long. He's starting to look a little bit like a Spalding ball.
Oh, just like a raisin.
I know you don't listen, Rory, but hi.
Thank God for it, Rory.
But yeah, Razor was like, it was a very violent film, but it was done in such a way, I think, that the violence wasn't what I was interested in. Because when you first see those films as a kid, you're like, oh my God. But this film was just like, it's style. It was one of the first just stylish films that I remember seeing.
Yeah.
Because like previous to that, like action films were very, like 80s action films, what I was exposed to on VHS in the 90s, were very kind of grimy and stripped down in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And this was kind of the first one where it was all about the style, and I was like, oh, okay, that's a bit interesting. Like, and then End of Days, which in a weird way, it was kind of like, that's the last. Like that was pretty much around the time that Arnie stopped making movies for a long time.
Yeah. So End of Days was when he was trying to stop the apocalypse, stop the Christian end of days.
He's trying to stop Gabriel Byrne, yeah.
Gabriel Byrne is in it, that's right.
Oh.
Is Gabriel Byrne also in Stigmata?
Yes.
With Patricia Arquette?
Yes.
Yes, he did a weird Christian evil run there for a while.
And his name is Gabriel.
I think he basically he decided to play both sides of the coin, because in End of Days he's Satan.
Right.
And I remember kind of going like, it was like End of Days and the poster having the 999-666 thing on it, and I was like, okay, it's got Arnie, I'll go see it. And I was 16 when it was in the cinema.
There's a scene where Arnie bites into an apple and then looks at it, and when he looks into the apple, it's like a Bosch painting. It's all come to life, and it's all hands reaching up towards him. And he goes, and throws it away.
Yeah. But there's also like there's a scene in that film that I've always loved, which is when, there's two things. There's the one with the weird looking albino guy who gets on the, who's chasing you on the
years before Robert Langdon, there was this lad.
And on the subway. And he goes to chase her, and I think she pushes off him, and he basically shatters like porcelain, but his face keeps talking. And I was kind of like, that's kind of fucked, like. But no, it was the first time that Arnie, I'd seen him be the kind of the broken hero. He's an alcoholic. His family's dead. He's contemplating suicide in the mornings, and I was kind of like, okay. And you'd seen that kind of in Lethal Weapon, but I was like, in this one, I was like, oh, he like. This one's not played for laughs, and it's not played with a cheesy sax thing in the background going fucking, Lethal Weapon music.
There's a movie, I think it might be True Lies, maybe not True Lies, but there's one where Arnold Schwarzenegger gets up in the morning, puts a protein mix into a blender, then puts 3 eggs in, like nearly without cracking them, and then pours in a bottle of scotch, blends it, and starts drinking.
That's End of Days.
That's End of Days. So that is
I think he also puts a slice of pizza in. I'm nearly certain.
I know it sounds like that's played for laughs, but that is played to like demonstrate how far he's fallen.
It is the gives zero fucks. Like he's doing what he does just to get through the day. And but like I also love Gabriel Byrne in that film, because Gabriel Byrne, there's very few, like, Gabriel Byrne is not a big guy. He is small of stature. He's what, 5'9", 5'10" maybe, if that. He's quite slim. He looks like your dad. He's not a big guy, and he was very good obviously in stuff like The Usual Suspects, because he's just kind of
90s movie.
But when it comes to like End of Days, he pulls off still being threatening when paired up against Arnie. Like there's a point where he picks Arnie up, and obviously it's done with like mirrors and whatnot, and smoke and mirrors. Like
done with what?
One would hope, yes.
Yeah, they couldn't afford wires.
Really?
But he picks him up and he throws him. But and at no point are you like, well, he's tiny. You're like, yeah, I'm completely buying into this. Yeah. So it was like some really good examples of acting. It was the first time I'd seen Arnie, and like obviously like because over the course of the 90s, I kind of devoured all of Arnie's films after seeing Terminator 2 and then Eraser. I was like, go back and get all the VHSs and watch them all. But End of Days was kind of the one where I was like, he's showing the broken guy. He's playing the weird kind of like downtrodden. And it was weird because it kind of felt, if you look at Terminator 2 was 92, I want to say. Eraser was around 96. And then End of Days, 95, 96. And then End of Days is 99. And it's literally like the start, middle, and end of the decade. And if you look at the tone of the films, they go from absolute badass to loads of style and the odd one-liners to super grim. And that's almost the arc for how action films in general went over that decade, because they were all following what Ernie was doing.
Because he was a joke in the 80s. He was Conan the Barbarian punching a horse. He was
Handsome Stranger. I was named for my father.
Like he was doing all sorts of stuff. Yeah, I can totally see that, as in like action movies being ridiculous and saxophones in the 80s suddenly becoming like
a bit grittier.
The stuff that they're putting to the forefront. Like really big directors are getting into it.
Well, like, see, Predator was like, people think Predator's an action film. It's not. It's a horror film. Predator is the standard stalker slasher horror, except instead of it being helpless kids, it's fully armed Marines. Yes. Which is what makes it worse, because it's like these guys are geared to take down armies and they can't deal with this thing. And so it's the stalker slasher thing, and that was kind of the first thing of like, but what if we do, like, people were looking at that and going, oh, this is a really good action film, and the guys are like, we made a horror, and they're like, no, hang on. This is an action film. It's one of the first ones in a long time where you don't have the cheesy love interest, you don't have the fucking buddy cop thing, you don't have the out for revenge. It is purely action, survive, deal with it. And like Terminator obviously was huge, but Terminator was 84, so it was like and I know they wanted to go back to Terminator, and I think it was like, if Predator hadn't have done so well, I have a feeling that the tone of Terminator 2 would have been worse.
Yeah.
Because it's that kind of show that, yes, there is still an interest, there is still people who want to see a serious action thing. And that's, again, Terminator 2 has the stalker slasher thing. The relentless killer coming after you, like, and the original Terminator had that as well. But they, like, people class them as action films because the guys who are going up against them have fully automatic weapons and aren't, like, you know, hiding in their school locker.
Well, I mean, they're all based on the original Westworld, which was pretty much like a straight horror movie where it's somebody running from an unstoppable force. That's what Mike Myers is, the force, the shape, the thing that's hunting you.
Yeah, and it's I mean, like, I just find it weird. It's that I suppose it's the whole thing of like Arnie. You know, he was the biggest thing in the 90s, and he very much, like, in his films, very much shaped the trajectory of action films over the course of that decade, and it kind of fell into the start of the 2000s.
The size of everyone, the size of Arnold, Stallone, and Bruce Willis and stuff like that, the kind of the apex that they hit. Do you remember when they did the Planet Hollywood ad, where they all bought shares in Planet Hollywood, and there's this amazing ad you can find on YouTube where the three of them are sitting around eating fries and like talking about how amazing the food is and talking about the movies, and then they all reveal they've got Planet Hollywood tattoos on their biceps and stuff like that. They're all showing them off, and like, you're like, so I'm watching this in the past, I'm watching this in the 90s, like, I've seen every movie they've been in since then. They do not have Planet Hollywood tattoos.
No, they don't.
Continuity problems here.
And like, there's a bit where Bruce Willis is pulling up his sleeve to show people, and you can see this as he kind of looks around and goes, what the fuck am I doing? It is amazing. The arc of kind of action movies there, coming into the 90s makes sense. I'd love to talk then about the kind of arc of horror movies, what they kind of, what way they went in the 90s. Looking it up there just before we started, there's a lot of stuff online about the 90s being the golden age of cinema, or being a golden age of cinema.
Really?
Where, 100%.
That was my reaction as well.
I mean, okay, I can no, hang on. I can see that, like, you have the first Matrix, you have Shawshank Redemption, you have Terminator 2, you've got times where
Titanic,
Gladiator, you have
The Lion King.
Yeah, I can see there's examples, but there's an awful lot of fucking muck.
There's a lot of muck, but it meant that if you were going to the cinema any month, like, or any year in the 90s, you could go and it would be Pulp Fiction versus Forrest Gump versus Shawshank Redemption versus, like, things were out. It wasn't just, there's a big movie out. There would be two gigantic movies out. There would be, like, Jurassic Park would be out this month, and Independence Day.
To be fair, Shawshank kind of flopped at the box office. That kind of that developed its cult following afterwards.
That is very true.
Did not know that.
There was a box office failure.
Wow.
But I've heard this for ages, and I do you know what? I think it's because loads and loads of different kinds of movies all evolved and took a step forward in the 90s. I don't think it was like, we can't just say, well, the 80s was action movies. I can't just say the 90s was X, Y, or Z. I think with Titanic being this genre-busting thing, like, is it an epic? Is it a romance? Is it everything? With Independence Day, with all Jurassic Park being a monster movie, I guess, or is it about man's hubris? Which is all monster movies.
It's a sci-fi
there's so
as
much
well.
stuff. But I really, really like that horror took a step forward and became meta horror with Scream and In the Mouth of Madness and
You had all the the start of the found footage stuff with the Blair Witch. Like
Blair Witch.
that
I remember going to see that in the cinema.
Oh
I remember going to see opening night Blair Witch in the cinema.
Oh,
that was an unreal experience because the place was packed and there's me and maybe like 10 or 12 of my mates there. And there were certain parts of that scene where the entire audience just stopped moving.
Yeah.
When they went quiet, you went quiet.
Yeah, and then the ending happened, and like, you know, we all got up and leave, and half my mates were like, I don't get it, and the other half are going, that ending was terrifying. What are you talking about? Like, why was he just standing there? It's like, well, you're not listening. There's like 20 lines of dialogue in the whole film, and it's like you missed 3 of them.
You missed it all.
I have 2 older sisters, and they went to see it. We were down in Sligo, and they went to see it by themselves, and came and met us afterwards to get a meal or something. And I've never seen 2 people more affected by a movie,
Really?
and it was the greatest thing ever. Because I was sitting there like eating a pizza and maybe a glass of wine, looking at them going, so what's the crack? Maybe I was too young for wine, but like, what's the crack? What was it? And they were just staring down, going, where were the handprints from? And I was like, what are you talking about? I need more information about this.
What do you mean weird? Yeah.
Yeah, and she was like, so are the actors okay? And I was like, I think they're dead. And I was like,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
act? Did you go and see a snuff movie?
No, but that was the whole thing. It was like
Yeah.
the marketing around it was so like genius, and that like they
Yeah.
kind of made out like it was, you know, like it was shrouded in mystery.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they had that like air of, well, maybe we did literally find this, and we were too naive as an audience to know that like there was a decade or 2 of this to come, and that we'd all be sick of it by the end of the last paranormal whatever activity.
Paranorman, yes, I've seen it.
To be fair with that,
Paranorman Bates.
One of the like a big chunk of the promotional budget for that film went on creating a documentary that was circulated on TV in the run up to it coming out, where they were interviewing historians and all this, and the historians were like basically bullshitting.
Oh yeah,
and
they were putting together the equivalent of Wikipedia pages back in the day. They have all these fan sites about the Blair Witch, and some of them contradicted each other. Some of them were clearly like MySpace, GeoCities, what was it, Angel Fire sites of people talking about there's like weird woods in their town. And
it's like it was weird because going to it, I remember it was mentioned, I think it was in something review beforehand, and it mentioned the last broadcast, and I was like, oh, so I know what this is.
Yeah,
but none of my mates had seen the last broadcast, so they had no fucking idea. And I was like, well, I'm not going to say it, and I'm not going to, you know. And it's weird. I remember going to see Cannibal Holocaust, which is kind of like the original one.
Yeah, so that's the one. If you were aware of Cannibal Holocaust, I bet you would have been fine with the Blair Witch.
Yeah,
okay,
so
right.
like Cannibal Holocaust.
Concept of what they were doing.
Yeah, Cannibal Holocaust was like a 70s one, and it was one of the original video nasties. And it was like, because they basically went up into the Amazon and recorded and filmed. When they were there, they were like, okay, so we're gonna, you know, we have to feed this crew and actors. So one of the local villagemen was like, well, I'm gonna go hunting, so you can just come and film it. And they filmed it and they worked it into the film, so you actually see them kill and butcher and prepare for food a turtle, a freshwater turtle, and people were like. And because that was done and you could see it happening and there's no cuts, and then the special effects were so well done with other parts of the film that people just couldn't tell, because they'd seen something and they knew 100% that they had seen an animal being killed on screen. And then they see people getting pulled apart later, and they're like, I don't know which is which.
The best special effects in the world I can point at and go, oh, I see how you did that, or you know, now that CGI I can go, well, that's where the CGI would have kicked in. I've seen scenes in Cannibal Holocaust where I'm staring at going, I couldn't recreate that.
I don't know
if I was given 6 months to do it. There's a bit of like
the impale thing is probably the most impressive part. So there's basically a point where there's a point where they find a native girl who had been interacting with the guys who get the film crew who gets lost. And they find her impaled, right? And she's naked, and it basically looks like it's coming out her mouth and going up through her privates, right? And what it actually was that the part coming out of her mouth was fiberglass, and there was like a bit she could bite into to hold it in her mouth. And there was a small seat on the thing, so she was sitting on a bike seat, and she is perfectly still.
That's it. That's the scene.
And the camera comes out and pans around her, and you're looking at it going, I have no idea how they did this.
Yeah.
And when I saw it was at the Horrorthon, which is actually coming up. I would recommend it for anyone listening who's in Ireland and in Dublin. and you're a fan of horror, the bank holiday weekend every October, they do a horror-thon film festival in the IFI. Now, and it's like 5 days of horror films, and they have advanced screenings and stuff. When they showed a kind of a Holocaust at it, they had the director there. And he was telling us that part of it was, he's an Italian guy, and it was translated, but because his English isn't great, but he was telling us that when they made the film, part of the package for paying all the actors was to pay the crew to essentially, like, here's 3 months of the use of my private villa up in the mountains. Go off the grid. And he was arrested for murder.
Yes, the Italian police, as he was crossing over some country, they opened his boot, found this film.
The director was arrested.
The director.
Yeah.
They played some of the film, saw people being butchered.
Essentially thought it was a snuff film.
And basically people being butchered who now couldn't be found.
Oh my god.
And he was put on trial, and he had to ring and go, guys, you need to come down here.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And it was but it was, and I remember them asking him about, like, what do you think of the influence it's had last broadcast, Blair Witch and stuff like that. And he was like, I actually really like Blair Witch and last broadcast. Some of the other stuff hasn't been great, but I was very impressed with Blair Witch, because Blair Witch showed that my film is very much, I will show you what's happening.
Yeah.
And I was trying to blur the line so people couldn't know if it was real or not. And Blair Witch does a great job of not showing you anything.
Yeah,
and still having the same effect. So it was actually kind of, I was impressed that he was even like, no, I liked it, because he's kind of like the originator of all this, and I was kind of like, okay, fair enough. If this guy's on board, like, I won't listen. I'm not going to go, actually, no, I don't think you're right. It's like, no, he knows more about this than anyone else. So sorry, a bit of a detour. I remember seeing it. It was incredible, like, just to see how it was made and stuff, and talk to him about it.
On the meta horror thing, I was saying about Scream, which is basically Wes Craven taking the slasher genre that we all kind of love, but like being self-referential.
Sure, yeah.
We had Ring, the Japanese Ring, come out in '98. Ringu. Which is about how we consume it. Again, kind of meta, about, you're watching a video about someone who dies from watching a video. We had Event Horizon, things like that, where suddenly it was, the hell story and everything like that, but in space.
I adore Event Horizon.
Do you know, I didn't like it the first time I saw it. I think it was because 100 people had said, this is your movie, you need to watch this. And I was watching it like in a huff, in a pout.
That'll do it, yeah.
But I really, speaking of Sam Neill, I really love In the Mouth of Madness, which is the Lovecraftian kind of Stephen King.
Shadow over Innsmouth, isn't it?
Yes, it's the Shadow over Innsmouth kind of story, and it's about Sutter Kane, this guy who writes the story. But it is the perfect... having grown up reading all the Stephen King books, which is a big thing in the 90s, 80s and 90s, it is about an author who writes himself into a horror, and then the horror starts coming true. And every time I see a movie now where the main character is a journalist or an author or a writer of some way, he's just moved to a new town to get away from it, I was like, do you know what? We're done with this movie. We've done this movie so many times. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that is a very, very familiar plot.
Yeah. I think that is kind of my point. My notable tropeable for 90s movies, completely off horror, is makeovers solve everything. Going into the romantic comedy and kind of teen comedy genre. First of all, jocks and cheerleaders, always the bad guys. All through the 90s. It is genuinely weird to think back and think that those were just the two people who were classically the bad guys. If there was a cheerleader on screen, she was going to be a bitch in like 10, 9, 8. So, she's a bitch now.
Yeah, that's right.
So I was just checking. It was 2000s. I was just checking Not Another Teen Movie.
Oh, yeah.
Well, again, that's the one that comes out at the end of all of those and makes fun of... Yeah, because American Beauty was 99, so there's 2000.
Do you remember who the male lead in that was?
Who? Go on.
It's Chris Evans. There's a point
in Not Another Teen Movie.
He's the jock.
Yeah.
And there's a point where there's a bit where he comes out and offers a banana split, and he's literally naked and she's covered in whipped cream around his crotch, and he's just like, can I offer you a banana split? And she's like, no, and he's like, and there's like half a banana sticking out, and he's like, all right, and he turns around and the other half's coming out his ass. I just thought that stuck in my head, and the fact that was set in John Hughes High.
John Hughes High.
Yeah.
I love when the second black character shows up to the party and they're like, oh, they already have a black friend. He's like, damn. He's like, damn. And I was like, I know, shit. And they both at the same time just go, that is whack.
Yeah, he's like, sorry, this is my thing. He's like, oh, I was invited by a friend. I didn't realize. I didn't mean to trespass. Like, and he's like, yeah, it's cool, man. It's cool. Don't worry about it. Actually, there's the thing because you were saying about the 90s horror.
Yeah.
What did you think? I think it's 90s. I just want to double check.
Jacob's Ladder.
No, but that's a fucking masterpiece. It is. Okay, it is. It's 99. What did you think of the remake of House on Haunted Hill?
With Catherine Zeta-Jones.
No,
right?
Famke Janssen and Jeffrey Rush.
So I've seen the original and I've seen The Haunting of Hill House. Do you know what? Then it must have been just forgettable. I've definitely seen it. It was you've talked about this before. Then I haven't seen it. It's the one where they all have guns and they all have a limited number of shots.
They're welded shut and they've no idea how many bullets are in. The magazine is welded into the gun.
Yes. No, I haven't seen it. I need that'll be on my list for this Halloween.
Because if you've seen the original, I'd be interested to see because that was kind of
the original with to make sure we're at the same one. The original with Vincent Price.
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the remake was the original was 59 with Vincent Price. Yeah. And then this was this was the remake where Jeffrey Rush is playing Vincent Price's character.
Right.
And it's kind of I always hold it up as the poster boy for practical versus digital effects. Because 99% of the special effects in it are practical or done with like trick photography. They film people moving backwards and then they play it in reverse so then the movement doesn't look natural and stuff like that.
Yeah, they did that with The Ring as well.
Yeah, all that type of stuff. And then in the last 5 minutes there's a bit of CG and it's shit and you're like, well, why was that there? That just ruined the film.
That's like Blade as well. Just anytime they try to just throw that last bit of CG and you're like, no, what are you doing? Yeah. I'll give a shout out to 13 Ghosts as well for completely
great,
fantastic. I don't know if it was the 90s, but they shot everything in a glass house and every single member of production had to wear black head to toe so that you wouldn't get little like shines of people walking around reflected in the glass. And I'm like, it's a house full of ghosts. It would have been fine.
Yeah.
But
anyway. That's a 2000s horror film, I'm afraid.
Yeah. What was your kind of topic?
Pick of the 90s?
Yeah.
You know, I think looking back in the 90s, being in the 90s, I was a very small kid, so I think horror-wise, Hocus Pocus would have probably been my film of choice, which I watched really recently as well, and it held up. It really does hold up.
It is very good.
I remember seeing that in the cinema as well, yeah.
Oh, did you?
Yes, I remember seeing...
How old are you? You're as old as time.
Yeah. I went to see Hocus Pocus in the cinema and then I had to rush home because they'd made this new thing called The Wheel.
So it was all the way down the hill home.
Fantastic.
Yeah, no, I think if I was to talk about films from the 90s and the kind of quintessential film that like left an impression on me, it would have to be like Cruel Intentions. Jesus Christ, I was going to say Dangerous Liaisons, but Cruel Intentions for sure. It's just kind of it was like the aesthetic of the 90s, and obviously Sarah Michelle Gellar, which was like mostly 90s for me. She's a face in the 90s.
Did you have a poster of Sarah Michelle Gellar?
Maybe I did. Maybe I did, Johnny.
In her Buffy guys or in her...
Don't worry about it. No, dark hair, obviously. Dark hair. You know she was evil when she had dark colour hair. Yeah, no, but it's like the soundtrack, the fashion, or lack thereof. The fact that it was like based on like, you know, kind of classic fiction. There was that thing in the 90s for a while where every kind of they started like contemporizing like all of the Shakespeare stuff.
We were talking about this beforehand.
Like, what was it, like 10 Things I Hate About You? That was good example of when they did it nicely.
That was Taming of the Shrew.
Taming of the Shrew.
Romeo plus Juliet. I think that was based on
Romeo and Juliet. Yeah, that was
Hamlet.
Was that a
Hamlet,
yeah, I think that might have been a Beckett
Hamlet was
play.
The Lion King, which came out in 94.
Oh yeah, very good.
Yeah, and
she's all that. I'm pretty sure it was also
She's All That. I don't know what one that was.
You know, that was like another makeover thing, tying into what you were saying.
So that's is that
you know, classically attractive girl takes off glasses at the end. Boom.
Yeah.
Game changer.
Yeah.
Very good.
That's we looked this up. That's Pygmalion, is it? The George Bernard Shaw one.
I believe it is.
Yes.
Well done, you.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
There was also it was 2001. They did
Were you thinking of A Knight's Tale?
No, they did
A Knight's Tale.
They did Othello. They did Othello with Josh Hartnett and Mickey Pfeiffer.
I remember that as well. Yeah, that was weird.
But yes, but they were all packaged as either kids or teen movies.
Yeah, no, they were, and they were all kind of put in like that high school teen romantic comedy drama type thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like Cruel Intentions was a little bit outside of that. Like it was a bit of a comedy, but it was mostly kind of darker humor.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's Dangerous Liaisons, and there was even like there was the equivalent of humor in that as well. Like, it was very much like, you know, the snide 18th century remark type thing more than
all that kind of, like, you know, whatever, like seduction as a way to exploit your peers, you know, so very relatable to all of us.
You said you were 10 when
about that, yeah.
Gossip girling around.
I think I was introduced to it like by a cousin who was older and should have known better, but it kind of
Le cousin de Giroux.
Le cousin de Giroux. Yeah, don't worry about it. Carlo's a different place. Just leave it alone, hey.
Yes, I loved Cruel Intentions. Speaking of Freddie Prinze Jr.,
he wasn't in Cruel Intentions. You're thinking of your man
Ryan
Sebastian is Ryan Felipe. Yeah, married to Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah,
for
but
a
have
few
we
years.
ever seen
beautiful
him?
Kids, and then
but Sarah Michelle Gellar is married to Freddie Prinze Jr.
That's right. Yeah.
Have I ever seen Ryan Felipe and Freddie Prinze Jr. in the same place at the same time?
You should be so lucky.
As a present to Sinead last year, I gave her the crucifix from
for the final scene in the church of the funeral
with a few bumps of cocaine in it.
I mean, he didn't go that far.
I got a little box of snuff, but I figured she had her own cocaine. She could probably
better cocaine than anything you could source.
I was gonna say
that was quite a good present. Kudos to you, and that's the last kudos you will get today.
Thank you. Yes, I think the teen movies. When was 10 Things I Hate About You? Was that 99?
That's 90 something. It was definitely in the 90s.
That was
late 90s.
An astoundingly good movie.
It was very good.
I not even pretend that like I didn't super enjoy that with Heath Ledger and the famous serenading somebody scene. And I feel like that's been ripped off a whole bunch of times. I'm sure I've seen it in I saw it in Scream. One of the Screams. One of the guys gets up and sings to his girlfriend in the middle of a cafeteria. I'm sure it was in American Pie. I think it just started.
It's in the first or second Scream. I think it's the second one because they're in college when they're in the second one.
Jerry O'Connell or someone like that gets up and sings to his girlfriend.
Yeah, he sings to Sydney.
Yes, that's it.
It's the second one, because they're in college and it's Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing when they come up with a scene like that that's so brilliant and influential that other people will just be like, let's just do a 10 Things scene where you just sing to her in the middle of a place. Yeah. And it's not like a cool musical. It's super embarrassing for everyone involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that the first time I was in college. I got up on top of I stood up on my chair in the DCU cafeteria at lunchtime and pretended to start crying because my friend Daniel refused to say yes when I asked him to marry me.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And his girlfriend just sat there cheering, he's one of my easiest friends in the world to embarrass. And like this guy's like, okay, so this guy's your height, Johnny, but like this guy's been a lifeguard of most of his life. He's built like a brick shit house, and you can just make him embarrassed in a drop of a hat.
Oh, that is comedy gold.
Yeah. The greatest one I've ever seen of that is when I was in Ballyfermot. They brought in a little carnival style thing one day. I guess they were raising money for some charity, but they had a mechanical bull. Right. And out of nowhere, Clive, who was on an episode way back when, went up, whispered something to the guy operating it, went off and did something, and then came back and got in the bull. And the next thing, NSYNC started blaring out the speakers. And he just started riding the bull, and he held up a poster that he'd gone off and made that just said NSYNC Rock. And your man turned the bull up full, and Clive rode it for like 10 minutes without ever falling off and just bucking furiously. And we were all just in there mid-clap going, what the fuck are we looking at?
Oh my god. You know, I like Clive a bit better now.
We're like, how are you good at this? Where do you practice?
When did you acquire this
It was astounding. Like, we were watching it up going, we're embarrassed for him. And we were like sitting back going, now I'm embarrassed for me. I feel like I should be better at this.
Yeah, that's the whole point. It's like, any embarrassing situation, it'll be embarrassing for the person doing it for the first few seconds, but then it gets embarrassing for everyone else, and it stops being embarrassing for them.
Yeah.
Cool, so that's movies. I feel like I should take my glasses off and let my hair down to end that segment, but I'll...
Oh, no way, man. She'll never be good looking.
She's got a ponytail and glasses. Those paint-coloured overalls. They'll never come off.
A few butterfly clips now and a few scrunchies and you'll be on your way.
You are 100% reciting not another teen movie now. This is...
Yeah. It's so good. I love when he's like... you can pick anyone to make her the prom queen, and it's like there's an obese girl. It's like, not her. No, I've got a worse one. And then there's like an albino girl who looks sick under a tree playing like a guitar, singing hippie songs. It's like, not her, obviously.
And then there's the conjoined twins.
Yes.
And then it's like,
not a ponytail. So video games. The 90s I think was the N64 versus PlayStation 1 kind of era.
For the second half. The first half was the SNES and Mega Drive.
Yeah, the SNES.
Sega Mega Drive.
Yeah.
That...
because PlayStation is 94 or 95, I can't remember exactly when. So it's like the midpoint on the decade.
I had a Master System, and it had Alex Kidd built in. Alex Kidd in Miracle World.
So that was the downfall of that console. You didn't need any other games.
Yeah.
Alex Kidd was whopper. Like, it was like, alright, why would I buy cartridges for this?
But the thing is, it came with another game. It came with Sonic. And after a while, we turned it on without the cartridge in. We didn't know. And this game came on. And I was like, it's fucking haunted. This is amazing. But there's a bit where you get to Alex Kidd. And I'm sure if I went back now and looked at it, it'd be obvious. But there's a bit where you play rock, paper, scissors against an enemy. And me and my brother couldn't figure it out. We didn't know that it was completely random. We didn't know if there was a pattern. We didn't know if there was a timing thing. But we just had to keep all our lives until we got to that bit, and then hope through the laws of averages we just beat him in rock, paper, scissors, and most of the time we didn't. And we would play it for hours to get to that bit every time.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Should have got
it was a really good game, but except for that bit. I think my quintessential 90s game... it's just Mario Kart. I think it is the game series that me and my brother have put the most time into. We started on the SNES, kept going with the N64, kept going with the GameCube. It is the game that we would just have on. If there was just one or two of us there, we'd play it, or if there was 10 people in the house, we'd be playing Mario Kart. It was an astoundingly fun game. And I see people playing it now, and I do that old person thing of, that's not Mario Kart. I see people launching things in umbrellas and turning into different characters and all this kind of stuff going on. And I'm like, no. What you have to do, you have to pick up coins and do this, and this. Like, you can drift now. And I was like, no. Wait, maybe you could drift before. But it is now bequeathed to the younger generation, and I'm slightly bitter about it.
Aw, I get it.
Yeah.
I get that. I even like that about Pokemon now. When I see the kids with all the fourth or fifth generation Pokemon, and you're just there remembering. Do you remember the Game Boy Color?
Yeah.
Like Red and Blue. Yeah. They came out probably in the 90s.
94, I think. And
94? Are you fucking kidding me?
96 maybe.
That's
so God, hang on, I'll check.
It might be 96.
Pokemon's going
man, that's incredible if it's that long. Yeah.
It was the guy who created Pokemon was a bug
96.
Like 96.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And he also made video games, obviously, but he just loved collecting insects. And he made this game, and I love that nobody stopped him at any point. He's like, you collect these animals and then they fight, and this is fine. And everyone's like, yeah, right, dog fighting rings, unsupervised children running dog fighting rings, that's fine. But he made it. One of my favorite stories, he was saying that he put it out in the Red and Blue on the Game Boy, and some random dude just sent him 50 quid or the equivalent, and was just like, here you go, I don't think I paid enough for this. And he's like, that is the greatest compliment I ever got. Someone bought a Game Boy, bought the game, and then sent me more money going, I just feel like I haven't paid you enough for this.
Did you guys play Pokemon Red or Blue? If so, were you Red or Blue?
Blue
red.
On Red.
And what was your starter choice?
Squirtle.
Yeah, same.
I had a Charmander called Zippo.
Nothing so intelligent though. Like, I mean, every time I go through this phase of like wanting to play all the Pokemon games as they come out, and then not wanting to play any other games on the DS. So I'll buy a DS, clear the new Pokemon game, and then just sell it off. And I seem to do this every couple of years, and I'm like.
So my little nephew now is super into Pokemon. He's collecting all the cards, and my favorite thing to say to him is just insist that there's 150. Just be like, did you catch all 150? He goes, Johnny, there's over 700. I was like, no, you're right. I'm wrong. It's 151 with new, of course.
Oh my god.
And he's like, Johnny, there's over 700. I was like, no. He's like,
shut up, you stupid old man.
And he's like, what about this? And I was like, that's a picture of a candelabra. That's not a Pokemon.
That's from Beauty and the Beast, friend.
Yes.
Okay.
You've made a terrible mistake, child. Clearly, you've got some counterfeit cards here.
Yeah.
It was one of the most X and Y generation. I had to pick the Earth starter because one of the first abilities it learns is roll out, so I had to call it Autobots. And then
Autobots use rollout. That's great.
That's not the optimal move. I don't care. I will fucking use this all the way through.
It's not the optimal move. It's the Optimus Prime. I love it. I went to the Game On thing that was going on in Dublin ages ago. It was where you go and they see all the old games, and like they had the Sim stuff there, but all the old concept art and all the stuff that like the diaries from the guys who were making it, saying what they thought they were making, and it's so interesting to look back. They had all the Dance Dance Revolution games over the years, but they had GoldenEye up on the big screen. GoldenEye's a fantastic game. And me and Clive again started trying to play it. We were just staring at our hands, and the game or the N64 controller trying to figure out where to put our hands on this manta ray. Somebody must have fucked up the controls. Obviously, that's what's happened. And we were out trying to fix the controls, going, "Oh my god, it's been so long since we played. We don't know how to play GoldenEye anymore."
Yeah,
we've got. Go on.
GoldenEye was my group's Mario Kart.
Was it?
Yeah,
in that we used to like there was 4 of us that used to play all the time in my mate's house. But for about 7 months, we essentially gaslighted one of them. Because what you do is when you were turning on the N64, you would just very slightly press forward on his joystick. And then it treats that as 0. So he can never press as far forward as everyone else, so he can never run as fast as anyone else in the game.
Yeah.
And it took him about 7 months to realise we were doing this to him. He just thought he was terrible because we'd have games where we kind of all without agreeing or without saying it, we'd all just agree that if we saw him coming, we'd just turn around and run away, and he couldn't catch us.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was just driving him mental. Like, so it was you know, like teenage boys, we're gonna torture each other.
Yeah.
Kind of what
absolutely.
we do. Like,
keep you know, you just have to make sure that no one ever gets confident enough to you know, achieve
to leave the
anything
group
on their own.
Yeah.
Keep it that level. I agree.
We used to play GoldenEye, me and Rory, where we would play proximity mines, and we would play it where one person would put the controller down, the other person would do a speed run through a level and put mines everywhere, and then stop, and then the other person would put their controller down, the first person would pick it up and try and follow them, and like all they would have is like a silence gun to shoot stuff. But you had to basically try and remember where you put mines so you don't get blown up along the way.
Yeah.
And if you got as far as the other person tagged them, then you'd run backward and do like a mine run, and just do that over and back. And it was the funniest thing because we got perfect spacing them that if you did blow one up, it wouldn't set off a cascade and blow all of them up.
Yeah.
So just one would go off, and like running through a door, turning and firing at the back of a door, and then running through, and then watching Rory going, "God damn it!" And then like going up to that door and having to shoot through the door 50 times to try and find this mine. It was great fun.
Yeah, no, it was a great game. It was probably the first time I ever came across like a first-person shooter game. I'll be honest, I watched a lot more GoldenEye being played than I did playing of GoldenEye. In a kind of like, Sinead, you can play now while I go to the bathroom, but god damn if you save any progress, you're in trouble. Once again, cousins.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, great game.
Definitely
a classic.
Did you play the Street Fighters and the Mortal Kombats?
I did. I played a lot of the Mortal Kombats and the Street Fighters and the early Tekkens as well.
Were you the one
that's not straight out of our time?
Yeah. Were you the one who would come over and the guys who were really good at it would be playing something?
And I'd button bash?
You'd button bash and just beating them for a few rounds? That's
But like
I
never
was that
more
kid
than
as well.
twice in a row because like they get really pissed off and then like, you know, like, oh, you've got to go do something else now. But yeah, it's good.
I was that kid as well.
Were you?
Yeah, I would just button bash my way through everything. Someone was trying desperately to set up a fatality, and I would just always just punch the guy at the very end. He was like, "No, you've got to do something." I was like, "No, I don't."
I don't have to learn any of your moves.
I was the guy who didn't have the consoles, so I didn't have a Mega Drive for ages, and I basically went from like a C64 very briefly to a Mega Drive to a PC. I skipped a lot of stuff, and like my friends had them, and I just was like, But I was the guy who'd like. I'd be in the shops and I'd see like a magazine with a poster in it and I'd buy it, and the poster had like all the moves from Mortal Kombat 2, and I'd sit there and learn them, and then I go to my friend's house and they're like, "Oh, you got Mortal Kombat 2?" and I'm like, "Oh, awesome, I haven't tried it yet," and I fucking destroyed them on it. They're just like, "Oh my god, how do you do this?"
I'm imagining you in the lotus position, just sitting cross-legged, 2 candles burning, and just staring at a poster. All the moves are coming towards you in space, and you're like, yes, I will.
Guitar Hero style.
Yeah. My game that I could beat anyone at was Bomberman, and at that Game On thing, they were projecting it onto the side of a building. They had like this Bomberman going, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna hustle some people." So I was like, all right, you guys line up and just start playing Winner Stays On. And I stayed on for like 12 rounds of just completely destroying people. And anytime anyone got killed, they'd just swap in someone else. And I was like, this is getting embarrassing, guys. That was super fun.
Wow. A bit of a bully, aren't you?
In some ways, yes. In the 90s, I would be the jock guy wearing the...
You're dead McFly.
Dead McFly. I'd have the maroon jacket with the white arms and a letter J on it. I don't go to a school with a J in the name, but I've gotten one made.
Just running around Sligo with people looking at him going, Jesus, fucking notions.
Notions.
I go to America High.
America High. Oh my god.
Some other just quick shout outs. Zelda Ocarina of Time came out in the 90s. Basically defined adventure games forevermore.
Yes.
Duke Nukem 3D I absolutely loved. That was the first like dirty game I played. I know there was like Leisure Suit Larry and stuff in the 80s, but was it the 80s? But Duke Nukem was the one where like there would be naked ladies, and like looking back on it, they were 12 pixels tall.
Yes.
But
they had pixels in all the right places.
and it was just you go up and you'd hand money and it's like, shake it baby, and then like,
shake it baby. Every single line he used was stolen from an 80s. Yeah,
Side to side.
they would just have 2 frames of animation and they would move between
just like
them.
a Snake the game.
Resident Evil 2, which is getting a remake, which looks really good if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And Monkey Island, which came out in the 90s and was the first big proper comedy game I played. I know there was Grim Fandango and stuff after that, but I played Monkey Island. I absolutely loved it.
I think Day of the Tentacle is my favourite of those ones, the LucasArts ones.
Yeah.
But also, the best Indiana Jones story ever is only a LucasArts game. It was never a film.
The Atlantis?
Yeah, Fate of Atlantis.
Yeah.
Which is on Steam. I've had it and I played through it there like a year ago and it's still really good. It still holds up.
Wow. Speaking of underwater games, hey,
go on. Yeah, okay.
Atlantis. See, I don't know if anyone else remembers this game, okay? But it was called Echo: The Tide of Time. It was on the Sega Mega Drive.
Yeah,
you
Echo
were
the
a dolphin.
Yeah.
Your enemies were sharks. I think you collected rings, but that doesn't make sense.
Shells, I think it was.
Shells, yeah, that sounds
There's
a
these
lot
little
more
conch
I feel like you
shells
swam
floating.
through rings.
It was like my favorite game ever.
Yeah,
I used
Echo
to play on the Sega Mega Drive. It was just great. It really appealed to my kind of like nature loving hippie kid shit as well.
Yeah, that was a survival horror for
brilliant.
me. Yeah.
Oh,
right, yeah, that's right.
I looked it up today and I found out that you can still play it on Steam. So I might go have a look at it.
Can you tell me the plot? Because there is a plot.
There's a dolphin. He's obviously the good guy.
I genuinely seem to remember it going
plot.
towards aliens and stuff.
Yeah, it's basically the majority of the wildlife is sucked out of the ocean, and you're trying to find where it's gone.
That opening sequence.
There's a time when you're out of the water and you're in the air.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can swim up high enough and like jump out of the water and all the rest. And there were secret areas that you had to like jump over a rock to get to. Yeah.
Oh, that was the best, and the music in it was so funny as well because it all sounded like dolphin noises, like in the background.
That's where we'll edit in a dolphin noise.
Yeah, please, if you wouldn't mind. Yeah, no, that was great. I just had to make sure that like it definitely existed.
Yes.
Yeah, no. There was a version of it that came on a cartridge that also had one of the predecessors for Bejeweled. Can't remember the name of it. And then it was one of these like 3-in-1 cartridge things, but I remember there was one that had Echo on it.
Okay. Yeah, no, it was left an impression, oddly enough. And then the only other game that like I can remember from the 90s at all is Crash Bandicoot, and that was a lot of my time. I love that game. It was just so fun.
The amount of weird shit that they did in that, like jumping up and down on polar bears to get extra lives.
Yeah.
That is, again, we've said this before in the podcast, but there was stuff in games where there was no internet, you couldn't look it up. You would do something, then someone would go into school the next day and go, there's a secret mask over here, and then everyone would rush home to try and find the thing. And the idea of like on the Tuesday going, there's a polar bear and if you jump on him you get extra lives, like what the fuck? You race home and try it.
Yeah, that was the first game that I ever played too much of all at once. In that way that like you play it all through the evening, then you go sleep and you start playing it again when you wake up in the morning, and then like by mid-afternoon everything looks like a box with an X on it. You know? You're very confused, and you just need to walk it off.
It's play Minecraft for 16 hours straight and go to sleep, and everything is in the square. Everything's a cube. Everything's a cube. It is the most disorienting thing ever.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. I still get it with Photoshop sometimes, where I look at something and it gets the little marquee tool marching ants around it, and I'm like, no.
I remember one of the first times I met you, we were walking somewhere and it was a really nice day, and like the sky was totally blue, and you said, yes, it's like a loading sky.
Loading screen blue. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing you ever said. At that point, you said a lot.
Yeah, I was about to say.
As we were walking along, you stopped at that point and let me walk on a few steps, and you were really considering just letting me walk away.
I wasn't sure. Yeah.
Fantastic.
My own games, again, there was a few that, like, there's not one specific one, but there's a few that I feel kind of captured the 90s for me, like in terms of gaming, which was the series of platformers that came out between 92 and 94. Right. So you had Zool, not the one from Ghostbusters. It was Zool on the PC. Right. And it was a platformer, and I remember, like, it was basically you were this ninja from the nth dimension that was sent to Earth and all this thing.
Yeah, like that, Strider, Shinobi, all those kind of guys.
It was more like, because these were the more cartoony ones. So Zool,
was it Earthworm Jim style?
Yeah, because one of the planets, there were 7 worlds in Zool, and one of them was like everything was made of candy and cakes and jelly and stuff like this. And then the following year you had Earthworm Jim. And Earthworm Jim, all the level design, the reason they're so fucked up is partially because of Doug TenNapel, who's just a lunatic, the guy who created Earthworm Jim, but also because Shiny, the guys who had done it, Gremlin were the guys who did Zool, and one of their first games was the original Gauntlet. But Shiny, who did Earthworm Jim, they had done like Cool Spot, the 7-Up game, and all this type of thing. So they were sick of working within like established IPs, and they just went to go fucking mental. They were like, just if you can come up with it and it looks cool, we're going to put it in. Yeah. Which is why you have like, and the fact that like they were taking the piss out of all the games having the throwaway female lead, which is why it's Princess what's her name. And
this is the notable trope is things getting radical and just getting fucking off the wall. Because I remember the backgrounds of Worms as well being fucking insane once you get into the proper levels. That was really mental.
That was Team 17 for the Worms game. They're still going, but then you had like Earthworm Jim, and Earthworm Jim kind of they were like they didn't want to stick to any one. We can't do this, which is why there was the weird like levels where you're flying through the tunnel and shooting. There's the bungee levels with snot. There's the fact that you launch the cow on level 1 and it crushes you in the credits. All this type of thing. And then and then there was 2 other ones. Then Disney did 2. So in 93 you had the Aladdin one, which was done by Capcom, and it was on the SNES, and it was an astounding game. Like, it still holds up. I've gone back and played that on emulator, and it is still a fantastic platformer. Now,
I was just going to say, anytime I get an emulator, that and Bomberman are the 2 I always play. The Aladdin one is fantastic.
Yeah,
maybe it's just because it's near the top.
Alphabetically, Aardvark's Adventure.
That and Adam's Family, and I'm like, I'll play these 2.
And then the following year there was the Lion King one in 94, and there was that was West.
There was a Mickey Mouse one with the magic paintbrush as well, which was fantastic.
Epic Mickey.
Hey.
That's a bit more recent.
But the Lion King one was like, it was harder than the Aladdin one.
Yeah.
I remember that, and I remember it being more difficult. But like all these like brilliant platformers came out in the space of 3 or 4 years, and then there was like a couple of others around it. There was one like Bubsy or Busby or whatever it was. It was like
Bubsy
the cat. And you're collecting balls of yarn and stuff. But there was it was just this weird thing of like, it's kind of it's interesting that like nowadays one company does a game and then loads of other companies try and imitate it. Whereas back then, like in the 90s and in the 80s, there was several instances of multiple companies working on stuff simultaneously, unaware that other people were doing stuff that would overlap. So, like, Earthworm Jim and Disney's Aladdin came out, I think, 2 months apart. And Zool was maybe like 4 months before them, or 5 months before them. And then like the other ones, they're not platformers, but like the Fire Emblem games for Nintendo, they're tactics RPG games that have been going for years. And the Sega equivalent was Shining Force, Lelis, who we had last episode, that's his favorite game of all time. It's one of my favorite games of all time. But those two were developed at the exact same time.
That's crazy.
And they were released like a couple of months apart. And it's like the whole Deep Impact fucking Armageddon thing and all that. But it's happened a lot in gaming in the 80s and 90s, where as the new technology became available, people were like, everyone was like, what if we could do this? And everybody just like, ran the same direction with stuff. Like, it's just really interesting.
We're seeing it now with VR, that VR is currently like the technology, they're just leaning into it, and it's kind of disorientating to use, so they're making horror games. Like they're not making, hey, isn't it fun to fly an airplane? And I was like, why wouldn't, like, that seems like the most obvious thing, you make an airplane. Make a racing game. It's like everything I'm seeing coming out are horror games, because like, no, it feels kind of shitty to use, it makes you feel a little bit sick, so we'll
lean into that.
Let's just make something where you're terrified and nauseous.
Play to our strength.
Yeah, and I honestly, I'm not sure what, I think Zool was probably the inciting one, but like for a lot of the platformers, I can't think, probably Commander Keen were the earlier ones from id Software, but there was that just, 4 or 5 years at the start of the 90s where we got this amazing array of all like really, really enjoyable platformers that just landed at once, and then they just disappeared for a while because 3D came along. And people were like, they were still trying to figure out how to do it in 3D. So the only real attempts for 3D for platformers on like that were successful when the PlayStation came around there was a game called Pandemonium.
Okay.
And there was like 2 people in it. There was 2 characters, and but it was almost like 2.5D. You were still running in a straight line, but the level would bulge out towards the camera and back in, and your character would just keep running in a straight line, like would follow it. And the other one is Spyro. Spyro was the first proper 3D platformer.
Spyro the Dragon, of course,
But they
Spyro
were
3D.
But they actually, the flying thing in part was because they weren't sure exactly if they could get like jumping mechanics and all that type of thing working correctly. So they were like, and like people would find it disorientating trying to jump in a 3D environment. Now Tomb Raider as well followed on, which is actually a Sega Saturn game first. But again, a lot of that was like the platforming and the jumping. Like, how many times did you get lost playing Tomb Raider? Like looking around and going, I've no idea where I'm meant to go here. Like,
the image of her pressed against a wall with her hands against it and like moving along it a little bit because I'm trying to get her to turn and fucking do something. It's like, ugh, and would just press against it for a second. I'm like, don't, just come on.
And like that's the thing. Tomb Raider games were like the first 2 particularly. They were great games, but they were fidgety as fuck when you started playing them. Whereas the Spyro games, you never had that issue. The Spyro games, when you started playing them, because it was so forgiving with the controls and because you could glide and fly, it was like, oh yeah, this just feels more natural.
And the first time I saw someone playing Mario 64, I didn't know how he was doing it. Like, he was running, and then not even doing a 180, like immediately jumping backwards and doing all this stuff, and it was so forgiving. It was just whichever way you were pointing, that I was just watching him going, I don't think I can do that. Like, when you hand me the controller in a minute, I'm gonna die. I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, it was just mad, but it was great to see how, like, it was weird that it kind of this. And it's starting to come back as well because a lot of indies are doing it. It's kind of too much. Like the least performing, if you look at genres on Steam and the lowest earning indie genres, the lowest earning indie games are either pixel art or art style is pixel art and genre type is 2D platformer. If you want to make as little money as possible on Steam, make a pixel art 2D platformer. And if it's amazing, it will make all the money in the world, and otherwise it doesn't. There's a new one that's come out recently called Dead Cells, which is absolutely unreal.
It does look amazing. But that's not a pixel art one. That is somebody who is making a fantastically beautiful game, and pixel art is what they're doing. Like, that's a gorgeous game. Yeah,
I've been playing a ton of it, and I'll probably start streaming it because there's a way you can set up. There's a specific streamer version where the audience can interfere with what's happening.
Cool.
Oh, really? That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I was so annoyed that Risk of Rain was so difficult because I thought it looked really good and I wanted to play it, but I kept dying. I was like, just show me all the nice things. So fucking stop.
Yeah.
It was more guys would spawn, and it would be me running around a level while an entire train, this fucking retinue of bad guys, would chase me around the level. I was like, just let me see everything.
But yeah, it's mad. Like, it's like all the 2D spawned really quickly, and then the next generation kind of killed it off in a way for a long time. So it was weird. It was one of those genres that, like, the slump came a decade and a half after everyone stopped doing it.
Yeah.
So
there's a very 90s gritty style, and it's in movies. It's things like Seven and even The Matrix and stuff, where the colors bleached out and it's silvers and greens and stuff. I remember Quake being the game for me that had like just that style. I know that Doom came out before, but Doom is actually quite colourful, and Quake
Yes.
is like you're in a brown industrial castle surrounded by brown-green enemies.
Yeah,
all
like Doom is very like oranges and reds, and it's bright and it's very vibrant. Like,
Yeah.
like the floor is royal blue. The monsters are pink. If you look at Doom, I still remember all the sounds from. I had all the add-ons for Quake, including all the ones where was it 9 Inch Nails or Trent Reznor who did sounds for the music for some of them.
Yeah, no, it was Trent Reznor. Like there's actually one of the weapons in the game was the nail gun, and the boxes had the 9 Inch Nails logo on them.
Oh, that's right.
The boxes of ammo. Like.
That's so good. I just like to this day still remember some of the sound effects from it, and they sounded so like clipped and horrible. Which is why I think everything had to be a cyber demon rather than like a normal demon, because instead of it being like "Rawr," it was like "Rawr,"
and it worked.
It always sounded clipped and like destroyed and distorted. That was good stuff. I think Doom and Quake are the ones that we used to go to each other's house to watch each other play, because I'm pretty sure we were scared but never admitted it.
Wolfenstein was the Return to Castle Wolfenstein. That was like, it was weird. My group of friends kind of skipped Doom and Quake. We were aware of it, and we got back into it when Quake 3 came around. But we were all playing like Return to Castle Wolfenstein. I think that's why I don't care about World War II games anymore, because I'm just sick of killing Nazis. I've done it to death.
I've killed so many Nazis, guys. You kill one Robo Hitler
with miniguns for arms. I mean, like, it's only so many times you can do it. So
yeah, I can see that. Cool.
So TV.
Yes, I don't quite have a notable tropable, but there's a really
That's
weird
not like you.
thing. I know it's there's a thing I've noticed that during the 80s, obviously there was the Saturday morning cartoons. They had all their G.I. Joes and
the things you got up for.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. But it
Dino
were all based
Riders.
on action movies. But they had a Rambo one. They had a RoboCop one. They had like Terminator 2 toys and stuff like this. They were going through this weird period where, like, in the 70s, Star Wars had come out and been this merchandising machine. And then all through the 80s, no matter how R-rated or horrible a movie was, they made a kids version. They made like this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it sort of petered off in the 90s. We had the Beetlejuice cartoon, and we had the Mask cartoon, and we had the Addams Family. But they weren't. Those were kind of PG movies. Beetlejuice was PG, despite him saying fuck halfway through.
It was kind of like PG by way of miracle. I don't know.
They took a PG-13 and then just PG'd it further.
Yeah, it was very much on the border. I think.
Yeah.
Well, there's no gore and any violence in it. You don't see the person hitting someone. It's usually invisible.
Yeah.
True.
So there was And
like things became silly. They had all the radical things of Ninja Turtles going into Street Sharks, going into Biker Mice from Mars. So everything was a radical version where they took a, animal plus profession plus.
Well, the Teenage Mutant Ninja
Location.
Turtles was a weird aberration in that the cartoon was the PG version.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the original 20-issue comic run of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was incredibly violent.
It was making fun of the
soldiers.
grimdark.
The foot soldiers were not robots. The foot soldiers were human beings, and they would just go through them with their swords and didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of like decapitation and everything.
Whereas the 80s was them taking established violent things and making them very palatable for kids and just packaging them that way. There was this weird thing in the 90s where they would take new IPs but put weird sexual stuff in them that like were kind of risque. So the Animaniacs did this all the time with the Hello Nurse stuff, and one of my favourite jokes of theirs is where Yakko puts on his Sherlock Holmes hat and goes, "Alright everybody, look for Prince." And then Dot walks up holding the artist formerly known as Prince. She goes, "I found Prince!" And Yakko goes, "No, fingerprints." And then Dot and Prince just look at each other and Prince smiles and she goes, "Yeah, I don't think so," and throws him out a window. And I'm just like, how did you get away with that joke?
Spielberg.
And they would do it all the time, and like one of Yakko's catchphrases was like him to blow a kiss to the audience and say, "Oh, good night, folks," after someone said something really fucking risque.
Yeah, no, it was somebody would say something, and then Yakko would just look at them for a second and go, Well, good night, ladies and gentlemen. And it's just like the deadpan, just kind of. I'm not going to address that. Like,
but they had Minerva Mink doing a striptease as well. But at one point they put a screen down over it, and one of the characters like chastises you for watching it, but she's still getting undressed behind the screen, and you can see it. They had Rocco's Modern Life, which
he worked in a sex call center.
He worked in a fucking sex call center. It was always him taking calls, and you never quite heard the content. Mm-hmm. But on this wall behind him was, be polite but be naughty, written on the wall. And there's an episode where he gets hired as a handyman to do some work for his Mr. Big Head, the frog who lives next door. But it's his wife who hires him, and the whole episode is her trying to get him to do things, but clearly trying to sleep with him. And one of the things she does is ask him to watch a TV show with her, but it's about the mating habits of like the rainforest frog, which to her would be a porno, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's basically she asks him to watch a porno. She hands him a drink at one point, and he looks in, and there's a bunch of flies in there as if it's a jacuzzi shaking maracas. So she's just given him Spanish Fly. And then the last thing that happens is he gets launched, knocked around the room in a big Rube Goldberg machine, gets knocked into the ceiling fan. It buzzes him. He lands completely naked and lands on top of the bed with her, and she just goes, "You shaved just for me?" And you're like, that was in a kids show.
Yeah, but there was a clip in the Rugrats at one point where the grandpa comes in first thing in the morning, and they're like, "Where were you?" And he's like, "I was out with my friends playing Russian roulette." And you're like, "What the fuck?" Like,
and then but then the mother goes, "And did you win?" And he stares at her and goes, "You don't know what Russian roulette is, do you?"
Yeah, exactly.
Last one on this kind of weird front of clearly no one was paying attention. There were no sense, like not even Ren and Stimpy and all that bullshit. Cow and Chicken.
No. With Ren and Stimpy, there was 2 seasons. There was 2 separate series produced. One of them was produced for MTV before they because MTV's original animation studio was called Nickelodeon Studios before Nickelodeon got their own TV channel. And the one that was produced for that was shown at midnight and was all over the fucking place. And then there was one produced. But the thing was that when people picked up the licensing for it later to distribution, they didn't know. So they just buy all 4 seasons and just show them.
Oh, that's amazing. I didn't know that. The last one, and the one that probably affected me the most, because I saw that all these other ones are like the banned episodes that you can go and watch clips of on YouTube and stuff. But the one I remember seeing in real time was Cow and Chicken. And it was an episode called Buffalo Gals. And it was about Cow... was in town, and a gang of motorcycling women came to town who would break into people's homes and eat their carpets. Wow. And they all had short hair, and they all wore Doc Marten boots. And there's this whole bit.
Carpet eaters, huh?
They were carpet eaters. Their leader was called Munch Kelly. And they kidnap Cow, bring her off to play softball, and keep quizzing her whether she's into pitching or catching and all this kind of stuff. And eventually she does the super cow thing and rescues herself. But I remember seeing it, and as a kid going, "This is something." I know that there's something more here. There's
something going on I don't know about.
Yeah. The writers are clearly making fun of my parents for not watching me in some way.
Oh, that was the other thing with Cow and Chicken was they advertised as the only TV show where the parents are topless. And then at one scene it pans out, and the parents don't have anything above their legs. There's just empty space. They're cut off at the waist, so they're topless.
Oh, that's so stupid.
It was a really, really weird show. Powerpuff Girls snuck in a couple as well, but it was a weird time when no one was paying attention.
Yeah, it was very much get dirty jokes into kids' cartoons time.
Yeah. So that was me. That was the rant, and honestly, the reason I wanted to do this whole episode.
And scene.
Fantastic. Sinead, what was your choice for
TV in the 90s? It's got to be once again the weird horror stuff, the X-Files for sure.
Yes.
That was very
very topical for the month that's in it on the run up to Halloween.
I suppose it is quite topical for the month that was in it. I remember being scared shitless of the X-Files all the way up along from the first time I saw it, but still watching it because I had to impress my cousins. Everything comes back to the cousins,
There was something about watching that as a kid and like knowing that you were scared but putting yourself through it.
Yeah, it was almost kind of like an endurance test, which kind of has lasted with me in my love of horror. Like to this day, I still will watch things that I think I will be a little bit, disconcerted by, up to downright terrified.
Was there an episode that sticks out to you as like that is the creepiest episode of the X-Files.
This is an unplanned question, Johnny. This isn't scripted. We're off script now.
Do you remember the Toombs episode? The guy who could stretch himself and...
Eugene
No, I don't remember that.
Do you know what? That episode was creepy, but if you actually read up on that actor in real life, it's creepier.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wait, we've done this before.
Have we?
Yeah, I think we have talked about this guy.
Brief summary.
While you're looking that up, the doctor from The Exorcist was actually a serial killer. There's a scene with a guy, and it's the doctor, saying it's not what's wrong with her, it's not her body, it's what's in her head.
I've actually heard that before.
There's a guy standing in the background, and he was a serial killer that was on the run, and was just clearly a psychopath who was just full of bravado. And they were like, "Hey, do you want to be in the movie?" And he was like, "I'm technically on the lam, but yeah, I'd love to be in a movie. Let's do this."
You've got a certain something. What is it? Uncharted Mania. Okay. That's pizzazz. Yeah. No. Yeah, it was weird as well, because I think it started off like a real sort of like underground kind of culty TV show, but it, like, by the time the 90s were over, it was being referenced in everything.
Yes, that's right.
Like everyone was doing throwbacks to the X-Files by the end.
It was such a cultural linchpin. We were saying that Simpsons did it. There's the Bloodhound Gang song.
Yeah, I remember
Simpsons did it.
The Bloodhound Gang.
Your man who played Toombs is an American actor called Doug Hutchinson.
Right.
He's been in, like, film-wise, he's been in, like, The Salton Sea was probably, and I Am Sam and stuff like that. They're probably the ones you know. Right, he was in Green Mile as well. He was one of the
yes, of course.
He was one of the guards.
Yeah.
But
Green Mile was great.
It's very good.
Is he creepy because he's a creep, or is it creepy because creepy stuff happened to him?
No, he's a creep because he's a creep. So in 2011, at the age of 51, he married a 16-year-old singer. Who's like a celebrity and all this, like, and they got divorced recently, but it's like she's now 24.
Yes.
But yeah,
my wasn't at like the age gap, actually. It was at like 16-year-olds in general.
Oh yeah, who into that?
Yeah, teenagers.
That's fair.
Gross. Yeah, so that's my kind of my takeaway from 90s TV, and of course The Simpsons, which I feel like most Irish kids kind of grew up quoting, and everyone's got like a couple of people in your life that you speak to mostly through Simpsons quotes.
Did you ever, when The Simpsons was it always on a Thursday night?
I don't know. It was always on Sky One, like right after Star Trek, which I had no interest in, by the way.
So from 5 to 6 was Star Trek reruns. And every time they went through a full run of, they only ever did Next Generation.
Yeah, that's right.
And whenever they went through the full run of Next Generation, they started doing Buffy reruns.
Buffy was great.
Yeah,
and that was Monday to Friday, and then 6 till 5:30 was The Simpsons.
Yeah.
And I remember there was days where they should have had a new episode, but they did a rerun, and I was livid.
No, Sundays was the new episode. Sundays at 6:30, because they do from 6 till 7 was The Simpsons, but 6 till 6:30 was a repeat, and then 6:30 till 7 was the new episode.
I remember being in like people's houses waiting for the 6:30, and like The Simpsons coming on. I was like, cool, and they're like, Johnny, you heading home? We might be doing dinner. I was like, absolutely not. I'm sitting here. I will stay in your house.
Oh, you need to get your family ready for the week. Well, fuck off.
I am watching The Simpsons.
I'll be here until I hear the end of Glenroe, and that's the end of it.
Glenroe was the siren call to people in there.
That was the homework.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh shit! I forgot to do such and such.
Yeah.
I could go on.
Yes, the speaking of golden ages, the golden age of The Simpsons was that 90s run.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Up to season 8 or 9.
Yeah, about that.
Yeah.
But so much so that it's seeped into all of our, subconsciousness, and we just, like, all jokes go back to The Simpsons for me now. Totally.
Yeah.
Scully, there's been another unsubstantiated UFO sighting in Middle America. Well, gee, Mulder, there's also been this report that a shipment of guns and drugs are coming into New York Harbor. I hardly think the FBI would be concerned with that.
Yeah. It's just so silly.
So good.
I appreciate the silly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's me. What about you, Glenn?
There was kind of 3 that I just remember being like, because for me, so I started secondary school in 95. So for me it was the what was the thing you were talking about in school the next day. So you could go into the water cooler moment, but it was like, waiting to go into first class and everyone's standing around talking about, oh, did you see such and such?
Yeah.
And X-Files obviously was a big one. Friends, which started in 94, but we didn't get it in Ireland until like 95.
Right, yeah.
And then Father Ted.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Jesus.
Those were the three big ones, because Father Ted used to be shown Channel 4 9 o'clock on a Friday, so you didn't get to talk to anyone about it until the Monday.
Yeah.
But it was myself and my mate Sean would sit there and watch it like every Friday. And like, I don't know, I kind of hate the internet, because without it I never would have known how much of an arsehole Graham Lineman is on social media.
Yeah, continues to be.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw he got an official warning there the other day, but anyway.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Did he?
He got an official warning from the British police because he basically said something nasty to someone on Twitter.
Why?
Because
like incitement to hatred, or like
no. I think he called someone a cunt.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
And but in England, that's enough for him to get an official warning off the police.
That's crazy. I always like when people are like jackasses on the internet. My mom was like, well, there's no law against being an asshole. Like you can't police for that. But apparently they're trying.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a ton of them in England. Like I think there was a 17-year-old kid who was sentenced to 3 years in prison for quoting rap lyrics or something because they used vulgarity or something stupid like this. It's a disaster. But anyway, that's gone off on another thing. But yeah, it's just because it happened to Graham Lineman. Like, and I'm a big fan of Black Books. I'm a big fan of the IT crowd, but I don't think they've ever topped Father Ted. Father Ted is like the density of jokes in that show was just unreal.
Yeah,
like, even
I've said
this to others, like
I've said this to people since then that there's on watching Father Ted episodes years later. There's ones where I was laughing so hard when I was a kid that I missed the next two jokes.
Yeah,
and then would catch up. And the next time I watched it, I was laughing so hard I'd still miss the next joke. And I'm still watching stuff now going, I'm still catching a joke here.
Yeah. There was, I remember several years ago, 2013, myself and two of my friends were sitting in my apartment and we were getting ready. It was when I was going to the Toy Soldier World Championships. They were coming up and we were painting models. But they'd never seen Father Ted. One of them was Danish, one of them was Swiss. And I was like, "You've never seen Father Ted?" And they're like, "No." I was like, "All right, I'll throw it on here," because we just had a.
Had they been in Ireland for a while, or did they hung out with you? Obviously.
Yeah, and like they've been in.
You're like, this will make everything a little bit more.
This will be clear,
contextualized.
Yeah.
And they asked me to turn it off halfway through the first episode because they were laughing so hard they couldn't paint. And I'm like, all right. I was like, but you kind of like, we'll watch it later. And they're like, oh yeah, definitely. But I can't. I'm trying to paint here and I'm laughing too much and I can't hold the brush steady. And I'm like, that's fair. That's fair. It's like it's because for a long time I used to think of it as being the kind of it's kind of a quintessential Irish thing.
Yeah.
But it's for me it almost feels like, you know, they should be handing out copies of it to people at the airport as they arrive. First time in Ireland, watch this, you'll understand what we talk about then.
Yeah.
And you'll understand how we talk to one another. Like, you know.
This is our syllabus. There you go.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, kind of, right.
But I just remember it being such a big deal, and even though there was only 25 episodes over 3 seasons, it's like it's we've talked about that before, about how like some of the best comedies come in really short numbers.
Yeah.
There's only 6 episodes of Police Squad, there's only 12 episodes of Faulty Towers.
Yeah.
And it's you know, it's impressive how well it's done and how well it's stood up. So,
yeah.
It's one that I remember missing an episode because I was at a summer camp or something, and just like really, really having a moment where like I might never see that. I don't know how to like I don't know when they do reruns of Father Ted. I was like there might just be an episode now which I never see.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a time to be alive.
I'll also give a shout out to Eurotrash and the Ibiza Uncovered and the entire
Eurotrash.
The entire uncovered genre of thing I would see on Channel 4. There was an uncovered one coming up and I was like, oh, I'll watch that. I think I'll see a boob later.
Put that on record.
Yeah, and they'd show the boob at like the 28-minute mark and you're like, oh, guys, come on.
Then it would just be back to the weird lad who, like, you know, puts metal pipes up as willy.
Oh, that was Eurotrash.
That would be most of it, like.
They're like, coming up next, we have a sexy nun, and then it's a guy who collects cow dung and uses them as frisbees and like walks around naked on his farm. And I'm like, no, but listen, we're all here for the naked nun lady. Let's get back to that.
You had to put up with the jackass bullshit to get to the uni boob.
Yes, that single boob that I'm so interested in seeing. With the voiceovers, the Essex voiceovers. The Yorkshire voiceovers as well. There's like a French dude walking around saying da 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 da, and they're like, "Oh, collect this tongue and I'll fling it."
It's too accurate.
So stupid.
Too accurate.
Oh dear.
Anyways,
Fantastic. That's enough 90s now for a little while.
It's enough nostalgia for the lot of you.
Till the next 90s come around.
Yes, absolutely. We'll be coming into the roaring 20s again soon.
Oh.
We'll all be in a radiated mess by then.
One can hope, Glennon. One can hope.
Yeah, it's looking that way.
Fantastic. I'll give a big shout out to the people from the Dark Side Detective. They met their Kickstarter goals, so fantastic.
Yay,
in fact, they met one of their stretch
Dark
goals.
Side Detective.
Well on those, check those guys out on Tinternets. Watch Glennon on the Braxophon Twitch channel. He is rockin' eternal. He plays all sorts of ridiculous jank, but sure, that's a fantastic reason to watch.
And don't try and solicit Sinead in real life at all.
Yes, don't approach. That is not a thing you need to do. I'm on Instagram at Pyramid Header. Anything you want to add, Glennon?
No.
No, we're good.
No, I'm done.
You're done. You're out now. Like and share, tell a friend, and have fun, everybody. I want to do the Yakko goodbye. Goodbye, everybody.
Good night, ladies and gentlemen.
Love it. Cheers, all.
Take care.